Okay. So we're gonna entitle this show "Is a Day of Reckoning at Hand" for our friends in Fulton County. And it has been a long time coming and many challenges along the way. We're going to talk about what's happened, and I want to put some context around this so people understand where this is coming from, what drove it, or what is driving it, and who's involved and what may happen next. So, on August 18th, just under a month ago, Trump issued a tweet, if you will, or an ex post, and in it he said he would lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots and voting machines. And this was met, especially here in Georgia, with just an outstanding round of applause, virtual applause from virtually everybody that's been involved in election integrity for going on now these 5 years. The mail-in ballots early on were seen to have come in their pattern of voting, the ratio of votes for Trump versus Biden going back into 2020 was a complete different ratio than early voting, early in-person voting, and in-person voting. It was as if there were two complete different populations. And we pointed that out at the time, and it really can't be that way. The same population in a given county often votes very much the same way, regardless of how they vote, the mechanism that they use to vote. But in this case, it was much different. And so right away, we knew that there was something amiss. And Trump apparently knew this as well because he issued this communique. We won't read the entire thing, but basically in here, he says it's important to get rid of mail-in ballots and get rid of the voting machines. And you'll recall that just last month or a month and a half ago, Tulsi Gabbard came out and said that they had found evidence that indeed the machines could be hacked. And since then, we've learned about more details that are being found and are coming forward gradually as they find things like burn bags with various information in them and other things. So let me introduce these two people, one of which our audience should remember. So Edward Martin, he is the Deputy Attorney General, and he has been assigned to lead this initiative to look into mail-in ballots. In order to make a change, you would think that one of the key steps is to prove that indeed something was flawed with regard to mail-in ballots. Next to him is Christina Bobb. She's been on the show a number of times over the past, 4 years, I guess.
Yeah.
And has worked with just about everybody across election integrity. She attended the infamous Pitt meeting, the original meeting where True the Vote brought in influencers from around the country and briefed them on some of their initial findings. And so Christina Bobb was in attendance there and has stayed involved in various means ever since. She is now executive secretary of DHS. And so it will be interesting to see what her role becomes as we go through this process we're going to describe. So what's happened? Well, we spotted this because Rasmussen said that Martin had issued a letter to Fulton County, putting them on notice that they wanted to look at the Fulton ballots. Here's specifically what's happened. Edward R. Martin, the Associate Deputy Attorney General, has been charged with putting the work around showing that these mail-in ballots are something other than what they should be. The initial focus that he has taken is on, of all places, Fulton County. And indeed, there's 148,000 ballots still from 2020 that are still supposed to be under seal and resident at the county warehouse in Fulton County. A federal grand jury has now been empaneled to look into this matter. And many will recall that in the past, we've talked about the power of grand juries, either at the county level or in this case, the federal level. They surpass almost every other constitutional mechanism. They can cause just about any investigation and any they can push on any action that they wish. It is also reported that some witnesses into this matter have already been notified and called. And Martin himself has notified Judge Robert C. McBurney, a name which many, many will remember, that the DOJ seeks access to these ballots going back to 2020. I would be willing to bet that many, having known that this, or now hearing that this letter is in play and that this initiative is underway, have nerves going through the roof for one reason or another, and we will see.
Either because the ballots aren't there or because they don't want people to see what's in the ballots.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Perhaps one of the two.
Yeah.
So let's take a walk down memory lane for a moment, if we can, and remember how this all came about. So back after the election in 2020, there were clearly lots of concerns. Many voiced concerns immediately following the election. You'll recall that Trump himself had a phone call with Raffensperger and a number of other people, a phone call which ended up being taped, it turns out. And we won't go through the list of people, but trust me, the folks that were on that call, we know who was on the call. So following all of that and following the initial concerns, in March of 2021, a suit had been brought to be able to review the Fulton ballots to see what information they disclosed based on how people had voted. And indeed, Judge Brian Amiro, who was brought into that case, he was actually brought in from another county, conditionally unsealed the Fulton ballots, but said that they could only be reviewed after acceptance of a specific written strict plan for secure handling. In other words, they were unsealed legally, but couldn't be looked at until he gave approval over a plan to make sure that they would be secure. That was in March. In May, 2-3 months later, Amiro signed an order authorizing supervised inspection by the plaintiff's experts. So at that point, he had agreed, yes, you can look at them and you can have your experts review these ballots. Just days before the inspection was due to be done, Fulton County filed motions to dismiss the case and effectively blocked proceedings about to authorize or to continue with the inspection. That hung around for several months, and then in an amazing turnaround, in October of 2021, Amiro dismissed the case for lack of standing, meaning in his judgment, he didn't believe that the plaintiffs in this case had any reason to have brought the case in the first place. That's the kind of judgment that's made up front, not after nearly a year of the case being in place.
Yeah, we had similar with Totenberg.
That's correct. And indeed, a very similar finding was found recently on a case that myself and a co-plaintiff have against Raffensperger, and that one is on appeal as well. So that's all in 2021. In 2022, the Georgia Supreme Court ruled that Georgians, as stakeholders in elections, can have standing to sue when officials fail to follow the law. So the standard there is if you can show that officials have failed to follow the letter of the law, then you have standing to file a case. In December of 2022, the Supreme Court vacated the earlier decision in Favorito versus Wan, I believe it's called, and sent the case back for reconsideration. It went first back to the Court of Appeals. And then in May of 2023, the Court of Appeals reassigned the case to the Fulton Superior Court. And we've heard the name before. Judge McBurney addressed other remaining issues in during 2023 and 2024, still without getting to the point of having anybody look at the actual ballots. So further in 2024, May, Brian Kemp signed a law confirming the public has the right to inspect ballots. However, Fulton County continued to assert that the ballots in the case were still sealed because of pending litigation. And as of this moment, they have not yet been made available to the public. So this now goes from the end of 2020 through this portion of 2025. Nobody's been able to look at those 148,000 ballots. So what happens next? Well, we will see. We will keep up on this as things proceed. This should be very interesting. Now, keep in mind that grand jury proceedings are not open to the public, and their deliberations are not public. So there may be a number of steps that happen now, which will not be in the public eye. For how long, we don't know. But the very fact that there is a grand jury, that this is being pushed, and that we have what looks like to me, my instinct is some of the right people are working on this, including up to and including President Trump. This should come as an incredibly welcome set of steps and update to those in Georgia who have struggled now for 5 years to try to get to the bottom of what happened, because everybody across this group of workers, the folks that have struggled so long to try to bring clarity to our elections, deserve to get to the end of that road and find out what their discoveries should have yielded up to now 4.5 years ago. So
it's interesting to me, Bill, because the way Trump, and I don't know who's doing this, if it's Trump himself, but he will find ways to get to something that may not be a frontal, straight on confrontation. He kind of like says, okay, I want to look at mail-in ballots. And oh yeah, there's 140,000 ballots in Fulton County we haven't seen in 5 years. So it's like a byproduct of a push over here, which I find fascinating.
It is. And that's why when people get caught up in, gosh, why did he do that? That doesn't make any sense. Well, maybe it's not supposed to make sense yet. Many people question, why did he focus on mail-in ballots? Why isn't he saying that the election was rigged? Well, he was, but he was saying it was rigged in a couple of ways, and they were going to go investigate those ways and try to change them. And so we end up at the target point. But as you say, we came in from sort of left field to get there.
Now I want to see the machines confronted, but we'll be patient because we're making progress.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. This should be unbelievably welcome news.